Whoop, forgot to remove the Twitter ones again. Hang on, let's remove Twitter. You are dead to us. There we go. All right, and we're underway. As Bugs Bunny would say at the start of Saturday mornings, overture, cut the lights. This is it, the night of nights. No more rehearsing and nursing a part. We know every part by heart, or at least we'll make it up as we go along. Happy Friday. Welcome to Up North News Radio. It is July 19th, and we have a radio show that'll get started about 6:06 here across the Civic Media Radio Network and right here on social media, but not Twitter anymore. Well, maybe it'll come back. We'll see if somebody's willing to pay for a premium account. Not I. We will just review Donald Trump's speech, which I guess just concluded about an hour ago. The longest convention speech ever, and said next to nothing along the way. But we'll review some of it. But apparently the reviews are in, and we'll play a couple of reviews from the speech as well. And it appears that Joe Biden may not be on the ballot in November, and neither will Donald Trump. Apparently Republicans are set to go with Hulk Hogan. I wish I were kidding, but we'll talk more about that. In our second hour, we will have our usual Friday stable of guests. They include former U.S. Attorney Jim Santelle. Mark Jacob will help me together do a collective eye roll on media coverage. Dan Schumacher will talk sports, and then we will get our butts into the weekend. We will see you here in just 4 minutes on the Civic Media Radio Network.
across Wisconsin from Civic Media. This is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Minnesota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Breitlow.
Hey there, Wisconsin. Good morning. It is 6:06 on this Friday morning, July 19th, 2024. Yeah, it's another beautiful day to have you here up north, live from Lake Minnesota, from wherever you're listening across the Civic Media Radio Network. You might be joining us over the app instead, maybe through Bluetooth on your car phone speaker or your smart speaker at home, maybe watching us on Facebook or YouTube, not Twitter anymore. You might be listening on demand by podcast, however you got here. Thank you for taking us along as we get set to head into another nice July weekend. I got a question for you. Are you aware that Donald Trump wrapped up his convention speech about an hour and a half ago? I mean, I guess that's the way it felt to some people. Longest Republican nominee convention acceptance speech ever at 93 minutes. It finished after midnight Eastern time for folks watching there. Apparently undid a lot of goodwill that might have been built up, as what started with a unifying theme at the start of the speech just turned into the same old rambling. I mean, rambling to the point where I would not be surprised now if not only is Joe Biden hounded from the ballot, Donald Trump might be replaced on the ballot by Hulk Hogan based on the reception given to Hulk Hogan. And I wish I was kidding, but I've got multiple clips to prove it. So we'll review the former president's speech and reaction to it, and how it does not appear to have moved the needle. Indeed, it might be the first good news for Democrats in the last 3 weeks since that debate where folks are saying, oh yeah, that's who Donald Trump is. It's that guy. We'll go over that and more coming up. But first, as always, a little housekeeping along the way. If you'd like to join us, the phone number for calls or texts, 855-75-CIVIC, 855-75-CIVIC, 855-752-4842. If you don't have those letters on your phone dial, you can call, text. You can also do the same through the Civic Media app, where you can call us or text us. Email us, radio@upnorthnewswi.com. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, put a question or feedback in the comments, and we might show it there. All right, so during this first hour, we'll simply go over the speech and cover some other topics as well. Then in our second hour, we'll have our usual Friday guests. We'll have former U.S. Attorney Jim Santelle at around 7:20. On legal issues that are in the news. I mean, Trump is still not nearly out of the woods yet from a legal standpoint. I mean, yeah, he had the Florida documents case dismissed temporarily. It's going to extend that case a long ways, but it's not going away entirely, along with the other things that are going on. So we'll talk to Jim Santelle about that. We will visit with Mark Jacob, who probably has a headache from rolling his eyes so much at the media coverage of the convention this week and of the drama surrounding Democrats this week. So we'll go over all of that. Dan Schumacher will help us wrap up things by getting back to sports. I am going through severe baseball withdrawal. I need my evening baseball games to come back. It's like the perfect white noise in the background as we're doing things around the house and watching while there's action going on. And no, there's just been nothing. So I will be very eager to have that coming back as well. And then we've got some bittersweet news from the world of comedy to talk about, and much more. Brittany Merlot will have our forecast too coming up about an hour from now. But again, a beautiful morning here. I'm betting it's the same down in downtown Waukesha, where we find one Greg Bach. Mr. Bach, good morning.
Oh, what a beautiful morning.
We'll hear from Greg in a minute. He's playing the soundtrack from Oklahoma.
Sorry. Oh, you're here. I didn't see you here.
Yes,
sorry, folks.
Sorry.
Oh.
just snuck right in there. How are you?
Yeah, it's gorgeous out right now. It is, let's see, it's 59 degrees, which I ain't mad at. And it's sunshiny, doesn't, from my view, not a cloud in sight, and it's got a crispness to it, which I enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what's interesting, Pat?
What's interesting, Greg?
We can talk about this with Dan later, though. But yeah, we talked to Paul Noonan yesterday, who's our sports guy on Matt and Aaron Air every other week, and It was just interesting. We were talking about the All-Star game, and you know how I love baseball. And when the All-Star game comes around, that whole thing, I'm just like, well, I'm just going to take a week off from baseball because I don't care. Like, it's just weird how I just shut it off for 4 or 5 days. I'm like, yeah, you guys go have your fun. Let people watch batting practice on national television and call me when it starts mattering again.
Yep. But it will starting tomorrow.
Oh,
In fact, here, I have the details. The Milwaukee Brewers are heading to the Twin Cities to take on the Minnesota Twins starting tomorrow. First pitch at 6:10, pregame at 5:35 tomorrow evening. Baseball comes back on Civic Media Stations in Richland Center, Racine, Kenosha, Park Falls, and Oshkosh. Again, 6:10 on Saturday, and then 1:10 on Sunday, and then off to Chicago to play the Cubs at Wrigley Field next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So Monday and Tuesday evenings, and then next Wednesday afternoon. A day off next Thursday, and then begins a homestand. The Brewers will be back home a week from tonight, opening up a series against Miami. A week from tonight being Yacht Rock Night at American Family Field. And it's where Greg Bach and I are finally going to go to a Brewers game together.
Heck yeah. I love that idea. I love baseball, and Pat Kreitlow's amazing.
Well, here, just in case that wasn't genuine enthusiasm, I have it on good authority. We will be joined at the game by Luke Mathers.
What?
Yeah. Your hero, Luke Mathers, in person.
This very handsome, very capable Luke Mathers.
Yeah, that would be the one. And
I
a horde of others. Oh, it's Coffee Cup Friday. Look, Greg's got a coffee cup. What is that? A happy little tree? It's a Bob Ross mug. Bob Ross's mug on a mug. And mine today is an oversized coffee mug from Yellowstone National Park.
Oh, that's
Get the big old map and all the critters. For folks who didn't know, a couple of weeks back we talked about how we each, for whatever reason, we've amassed way too many coffee mugs from, trips and souvenir shops and things. And I figure before they all go to Goodwill, we should at least give them a good highlight one more time. So this week it's Yellowstone, and I pulled up a half a dozen from the basement. And so for the next few weeks, at least, it'll be Coffee Cup Friday as well.
I got to go find mine because there's one specific one that I want to bring in that you guys are going to love.
Oh, good.
I was going to say, though, like a regular coffee cup is depressingly small.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
when you have that oversized one, that one that's just perfect, where like you put two pot or like pot it twice, and it's the perfect. Like this is like, it's 2/3 of a cup with one pot, and it's like,
it's like having a little espresso cup, but it's not. It's just too little coffee. Let's see. The Laughing Tap this weekend is back in action.
Yeah, Laughing Tap is back in action, and I'm saying it right here. I'm dedicating all shows this weekend to a fallen great we will talk about later.
Yep.
And John Doerr is in town this weekend. We got one show tonight, 2 shows tomorrow. John Doerr is like Canadian royalty up there. He has been on TV up there. He's been on TV down here. He's stand-up and on Conan, the late shows. Very just gruff and grumble dude, but really funny. It's hard to explain. I would just go to YouTube, find a clip, and it's going to be great. But yeah, you can go to laughingtap.com for those tickets. Those tickets are $22 online, $25 at the door, which that's pretty good price. And there's no drink minimums, and the RNC is out of town. But I did hear this for those listening. If you're listening in the Milwaukee area or going to be in the Milwaukee area, they are going to keep restrictions on parking up through the weekend.
Really?
So some of the parking might not be as available around Milwaukee down by that area. You won't be troubled by the tap because we got plenty of parking, street parking. But I just saw that and I thought I'd just put that out there.
Okay. Well, folks need that update that Milwaukee will not be entirely back to normal after what has been a somewhat disappointing Republican convention in terms of the ancillary business. But we'll just let it go at that because I want to spend these final 3 minutes before the break talking about the sadder side of comedy with yesterday's passing of Bob Newhart at the age of 94. 3 things to say.
Yeah.
His early stand-ups when he was still an unknown working in accounting are, frankly, in this day and age, underappreciated. Go back and listen to early Bob Newhart comedy, just him on a telephone. the mid-year stuff, the Bob Newhart show and some of the other special appearances. Of course, that's how he became an institution, later a legend, and then in his later years doing Big Bang Theory, doing Elf, and everything. He never lost his touch. And all three phases of his life were amazing. He had a beautiful friendship with Don Rickles. And the fact that he is, reunited and with their spouses is, makes that brings at least a little comfort to an otherwise sad occasion for a guy who had a hell of a ride.
Yeah, I mean, where do you start with that man? He was legendary, influential, the button-down mind of Bob Newhart, his first comedy record. I mean, look up the stats on that. It was like a rock star's album.
He won Grammy. He won a Grammy. He was number 1 and 2 on the Billboard album chart for a while.
Yep.
With his first 2 albums.
And folks, he didn't win Grammys for Best Comedy Record. There was no category back then. He won Best Record.
Yes.
That's how big this record was. And it is beautiful. And he's just, he was a lovely, lovely human. If you go to my Twitter page, it's I am Greg Bach. You can see I posted the mini doc that the New Yorker and Judd Apatow put out about he and Don Rickles. They were brothers. They were best friends. They loved each other so much. They're the Ginny and Barb and Don. They were best friends. They traveled. Videotapes of these travels. I mean, it's the weird thing, Pat. He was 94. We knew it was going to happen eventually.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take the hurt away because it's just one more comedy great that's gone, and he never stopped being funny. And you're right. He is just as funny on Big Bang Theory as he was on his records. That dry delivery, that wit is so influential. Watch Dave Foley on The Kids in the Hall, and you're going to see that influence all through the time of his performances. He will be missed. He is loved, and yeah, my heart's a little heavy.
The wit, especially, because anybody can be dry, anybody can be deadpan, but if you have a quick wit to go along with it, a lot of those lines weren't pre-written, or if they were written with great care to be perfectly funny. And again, still, and I will fight anybody on this, the greatest TV series finale ever of Newhart and breaking the time-space continuum, to go back to the Bob Newhart show. Chef's kiss, Bob Newhart. Rest in peace. Back with more. We'll unpack the news next. Live from Lake Wissota on the Civic Media Radio Network. You're up north. The Civic Radio Media Network. You didn't think we forgot. Of course. It's Yacht Rock Friday.
Funky Yacht Rock.
Uh-huh. Let's see. From Roger, rest in peace, Bob Newhart. My favorite zinger of his was of him on the phone with his wife. Honey, what are you making for dinner? Uh-huh. You should really call that creamed chip beef on toast.
Wisconsinites, if you know, you know.
You do know. From Michael, I liked Bob Newhart in the Librarians movie series. He was a great foil to Jane Curtin in there. Got to admit, I don't think I've seen that. And I like him. I like her. I should watch that. There's a big deal going on around the world right now in terms of a global tech outage, one that has kept airlines grounded, that has affected banks, that has affected broadcasters. When I turned on my TV during the 4 a.m. hour, the networks were all like just single camera anchor, no video, no graphics, because they couldn't communicate with all the many places where they have people working. Same goes with airlines. And it was all part of a software update, believe it or not.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. All these folks who were running the Microsoft Windows operating system, there's this cybersecurity firm known as CrowdStrike. Their software is used by scores, I would say hundreds of industries around the world to protect against hackers and outside breaches. But a CrowdStrike software update appeared to crash everything that was running a particular form of Microsoft Windows.
Apple people are like told you.
Let's see. And here's just some scattered observations from the New York Times and others. McDonald's in Japan closed some stores and limited operations because their cash registers weren't working. The computer emergency response team in India issued an advisory on the the critical severity rating of computers crashing. I know that all the airlines, United, Delta, and American, were grounded, at least for a time. I don't know if they're even back up and running or not, or at least are partially. It's just that reminder of how weirdly interconnected we all are. But it's also a reminder of a theme that we sound on this program a lot, and that is monopoly power. I mean, all these folks running Microsoft, and it's not like you shouldn't be rewarded for having a good idea. That's not the point, or a good product. But when you have monopoly power on it, there can be consistent, shall we say, standards all across an industry. But that shouldn't mean that everybody has to use the same product for it, because then look how susceptible you are, whether it's one software company or that only 4 meatpacking plants, control most of the food supply, as we learned during the pandemic when they went down. So there is a lesson in all of this disruption that's going on today. Whether we learn the lesson, I don't know. That's another thing. So again, our if you're affected by this at all, we hope that things start to get better for you as the day goes on. The Vice President, Kamala Harris, is coming to Milwaukee. That's right. Milwaukee back in the news again. The campaign never stops in Wisconsin. The Vice President will be in Milwaukee next Tuesday. According to the Biden-Harris campaign, it will be her 5th visit to Wisconsin this year. She was back here in May talking about how the Biden-Harris administrative economic policies have helped Americans and addressed disparities that affect Black Americans and business owners. As far as the Trump speech at the convention goes, I did not see it. I was in bed before it started. Last thing I remember seeing was Kid Rock running around on stage screaming, and I said, this seems to be a good time for me to check out. So I did. And actually, and by the way, don't get me wrong, I only saw about 8 seconds of Kid Rock. I watched Tommy Boy last night. That held up much better than me, the political junkie, the guy who can't stop watching the news, managed to disconnect and watch Tommy Boy last night.
We were just talking about that movie yesterday.
Mm-hmm. And
so good.
It still holds up.
Yep.
But okay, if you're thinking, okay, Kid Rock was there at the convention, and did you really just mention Hulk Hogan at the top? Yeah. Yes, I did, because, and again, I just saw clips of this on social media, but he was one of he was part of the undercard, shall we say. And it was just all exaggerated, and he was entirely in character, and he ripped his shirt to shreds, and there was a Trump tank underneath that he was wearing. And you're thinking, okay, we are one step closer to the movie Idiocracy, which is the foundation of this radio program. If you have not watched the movie Idiocracy, well, the moment you do, you will be so much better keyed in to this program. But there's Hulk Hogan doing his impression of, President Macho Camacho or whatever his name is in the movie, and you're thinking, okay, you're rolling your eyes, right? No. After all the speeches, including Trump's, listen to this. We're going to play first Anderson Cooper, and then we're going to play Tom Lamas from NBC. And then I've got a Garrett Haight clip that we'll play later on. But we're going to start with Anderson Cooper talking about the effectiveness of last night's speeches.
And even tonight, I mean, Hulk Hogan, of all people, probably reached an audience which hasn't paid a lot of attention, hasn't listened to Trump speeches before, and did it in an extraordinarily compelling way. I mean, I'm not a devotee like Scott of WrestleMania.
Okay, that's fine. Maybe that's a standalone comment. No, I bring you over to Tom Lamas of NBC News on the convention floor.
People like Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan gave what I would say is probably the best speech at this convention so far, and there have been speeches that have blown the roof off this place. People who love the conservative politics here, who love MAGA. Hogan came in here, he did something completely different. He also was just entertaining, right? He was funny, he made people laugh, and even if you don't care for the politics here, he might have.
He didn't do anything different. He did a shtick.
He didn't do anything different. This again. In idiocracy, politics has become nothing but entertainment, and that's exactly what this is. And I'm praying that Mark Jacob did not hear that clip either live or just now, because it might have killed him. It might have finally put him over the edge. Because for everything that Trump said and did as well, and the lies that he continued to tell, the write-up by the Associated Press was amazingly somber and deferential to Trump, saying, "Oh, he tried to strike a new tone." It's like, no, he didn't. He did in the very beginning, which we'll get into in our next segment here. But after that, it just was again, it completely went off the rails. But I wanted to spend this time talking about, just the environment around it. When Trump came out, the screen behind him had these big, like Broadway lights and giant light bulbs spelling out Trump. It looked like a parody. Prior to Donald Trump coming down that escalator 8 years ago, or whatever it was, 9 years ago, you would have said a scene like that was parody. We would never allow presidential candidates to come out to this kind of showbiz stuff with Kid Rock and Hulk Hogan and Broadway lights. And it has now become par for the course, because if you have enough, bread and circuses, you can have all the power you want. And that's exactly, Donald Trump knows that. And if he puts on a show, I mean, he clearly thinks he's already going to win. And then some real things are going to happen that nobody wants to talk about because politics is boring. But we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk more about his speech, the substance of it, coming up after the Midwest Farm Report and more here on Up North News Radio for this Friday morning. I'm Pat Kreitlow.
You be making like a feline, heading for the borderline, going for broke.
Little Yacht Rock Friday from Robert Palmer, reminding us that it takes every kind of people, unless, of course, you're in the MAGA movement, in which case it's, just our people, and the rest of you need to conform. Because that was our theme this week, unity. Unity meaning y'all should come around to our way of thinking, or else. Let's talk about mass deportations. And by the way, is it just me? Do a lot of people think it's odd that a lot of those people waving signs, mass deportations now, are going to be in church on Sunday? Might just be me. I don't know. Let's see. How do I want to get into this? Let's start with the New York Times, a paper that I have been mercilessly flogging for its decidedly pro-Trump coverage lately. I think did the same thing that a lot of Americans may have done yesterday. They actually heard Donald Trump give a speech and said, oh, wait, that guy. We wanted to be sympathetic to the guy who was shot at last Saturday, but he's still wearing that pillow on his ear. We don't have any actual medical report on his injuries. There's a lot of things that aren't being said. He hasn't given a press conference. Here he's given a speech. Well, he's starting out all right, and then it goes off the rails. Excuse me. And here's the headline. Trump struggles to turn the page on American carnage. American carnage was the title that was collectively given to his inauguration speech back in January of 2017. Subhead says, on the last night of the GOP convention, Donald J. Trump promised to bridge political divides and then returned to delighting in deepening them. Lisa Lair and Michael Bender are the writers, and the lead goes like this. Donald J. Trump has long been a man undone by himself. He imperiled his presidency and political campaigns with personal grudges, impulsiveness, and an appetite for authoritarianism. His casual approach to the rule of law and unwillingness to accept electoral defeat resulted in $83 million in penalties, nearly 36 felony convictions, and additional legal trouble ahead. Must be a typo. The word coup is missing from that sentence. But anyway, on Thursday night, however, with his right ear still bandaged 5 days after he was wounded by a would-be assassin's bullet, parenthetically, no, we don't know that, still could have been shattered glass from a teleprompter, Mr. Trump attempted a politically cunning transformation. He opened his address by casting himself as a unifying figure, promising to bridge political divides he had long delighted in deepening. At brief moments, he struck tones more similar to President Barack Obama's message of hope and healing than to the dark version of America that Mr. Trump described in accepting his first two Republican presidential nominations. Okay, so it all starts well. We're coming together. He's talking personally for a bit about the speech, but then the writer's going to say, yet even this speech, designed to debut the new message, underscored Mr. Trump's challenge with discipline. He stuck to the script at the start, but as the clock ticked well beyond the 1 hour mark, he couldn't resist falling back into the kind of rambling, unscripted diatribe that has long been his signature style. At 93 minutes, it was the longest Republican nomination address that's been measured. Mr. Trump's ultimate success will depend on whether, for the final 15 weeks of the campaign, he can contain his self-destructive tendencies and temper his preference for vengeance and unpopular hard-right policies. That's putting it mildly. But this is who he is, and that is what he had to say. I'm not going to play you very many speech clips because you've heard many of them at this point. But here's one. Here's Trump talking about jobs that are being taken by undocumented immigrants. That's not how he refers to them, of course. I'm a little worried about his math, but this is what he says about the jobs. And by the way, when he talks about the jobs that are taken, I again ask you to say to yourself, what is it that he thinks Black people and Hispanic people do for jobs? and what they're capable of or not capable of. Give a listen.
By the way, you know who's taking the jobs that are created? 107% of those jobs are taken by illegal aliens. And you know who's being hurt the most by millions of people pouring into our country? The black population and the Hispanic population, because they're taking the jobs from our black population, our Hispanic population, and they're also taking them from unions. The unions are suffering because of it.
It was worth it just to watch Greg Bach's reaction when Trump said 107% of the jobs are being taken by immigrants.
That math ain't mathin', Pat.
No, sir. No, sir, it's not. But that is. Donald Trump gave parts of a speech that he has been giving for 4 years or more. It's now been nearly 4.5 years since he talked about signing a Navy contract for ships to be built in Marinette. And once again, Donald Trump had to give that shout out to Marinette and the shipbuilding. And he was pointing to Scott Walker several times, referring to him as governor. Scott Walker was unseated in 2018. But he was there clapping and sucking up as best he could. So here's Trump talking to Scott Walker and the rest of the Wisconsin delegation about something he's been saying for 4 years that has never, ever been corroborated.
USA and Wisconsin, just like I gave you that massive ship contract, and you're doing a very nice job, Governor, right? Thank you, Governor. And they're doing a great job. In fact, I had a little design change, and we gave them a tremendous for essentially what we used to call destroyers. These are now the most beautiful. They look like yachts. I said, we have to take the bow and we have to make it a little nicer and a little point at the top instead of a flat nose. And the people at the shipyard said, this guy sort of knows what he's doing. We have the most beautiful ships, right, Governor? And everybody's sitting over there. And it was a big contract that everybody wanted. I gave it to Wisconsin, but we're going to have a lot of that built right here in the state of Wisconsin. And
keep our name out of your mouth.
No, he can't help himself. But he has been saying for 4 years now that he personally changed the design of a destroyer, and that they said, wow, you're really smart about this. And I promise you, I have looked and I have looked. And I have found nobody that can corroborate what he is saying, that he changed the design of a ship, and the Navy said, good job, sir.
This guy really knows what he's doing. That's really fairly smart. It's the point with the flat point.
Here's the president, the former president of the United States, after praising, himself, of course, and others like Hungarian dictator Viktor Orban. Of course, he misses his buddy in North Korea.
we stopped the missile launches from North Korea. Now North Korea is acting up again, but when we get back, I get along with him. He'd like to see me back, too. I think he misses me, if you want to know the truth.
Yeah,
Why
he does
is that
miss
funny?
you. Yeah, he misses you. Putin misses you. Orban misses you. They'd love to see you back in power. Why might that be? Think about that. Alicia notes from up near Marinette. Meanwhile, 3 ships have been sitting in the Menominee River for over a year here, so I don't know what's happening with the ship contract. But anyway, on and on he went with so many things that, again, I don't have time to play you the whole fact-checking clip from CNN. It runs about 3 minutes of everything that he said that wasn't true. So it went on and on and on. Here's Garrett Hake from NBC News describing what it was like during the beginning of the speech versus later in the speech.
Garrett, how did the speech go over where you were sitting?
Well, Savannah, we're waist deep in balloons now. It felt like it's kind of an effort to manufacture a bit of energy that was lacking at the second half of that speech. The first half, I saw a lot of wet eyes. The second half, I saw some closed eyes in the section that I'm in right now. I'm with Brooke.
A lot of closed eyes. By the way, you know who else had closed eyes throughout the convention? Donald Trump. He was there every night of the convention. Every night he was seen maybe asleep, and yet you didn't hear boo about that in mainstream media. If Joe Biden blinked, they would have said, oh, he's asleep again. Oh, poor sleepy Joe. But I digress. What did regular people think about this? CNN had a panel of undecided voters. Let me play you 2 clips from there. The first one noting, in both cases, they're noting what I'm trying to express to you and what I saw across social media was that unless you are a big old Trump fan, everybody else looked at it and went, oh, yeah, that guy. Here's one talking about how one of the things that concerns her is that, Trump hasn't changed his 2020 rhetoric.
His rhetoric hasn't changed about the 2020 election, and I'm really concerned that we're going to have another issue depending on who wins. So, I'm just really praying that if Trump wins, the guardrails of democracy will hold.
We have to pray that the guardrails of democracy will hold if Trump is elected. And one more undecided voter who, again, kind of summed it up in terms of what they started to hear and then what they heard later in the speech.
So I gave his speech a D. It started out great, but then he went into mistruths and grievances and attacks, and it just totally contradicted itself in terms of what he wanted to achieve with unity.
Yeah, so again, like so much of the Trump presidency, there were things he could have done right. Something as basic as an infrastructure bill. Had Donald Trump done an infrastructure bill, didn't have to be as big as Biden's and the Democrats. It could have been, whatever you would call a mid-level bipartisan infrastructure bill. He would have won election, no problem, in 2020, but he couldn't get that done. He said he was going to replace Obamacare. He couldn't get that done. Instead, it was the nation went from embarrassment to crisis when COVID came, and it was mismanaged, Mr. Bach.
I just want to play this really quick, this clip, this last one for the first undecided voter right here.
2020 election, and I'm really concerned that we're going to have another issue depending on who wins. So, I'm just really praying that if Trump wins, the guardrails of democracy will hold.
So if you are that concerned about the guardrails coming off of democracy, if this guy wins, why are you undecided? That's what I want to know. Ooh. That is what blows my mind, the idea of undecided voters. If you are that concerned about democracy falling apart under whichever candidate, why are you undecided? Why are you sitting in that room? Why are you not making sure that the person who worries you about our democracy falling apart isn't elected? That is what is the crux of my concern. I don't understand it, Pat. I just don't.
For me to properly answer that, I'm realizing right now I have to contradict something that I have been saying for decades. I have always tried to be positive on the side of civic engagement and voting. One thing I've said as much as anything else is know the candidates so that you're voting for somebody and not against. It's too easy to vote against somebody in this country with all the negative ads. Do a little reading and be for somebody. And clearly, there are still tens of millions of Americans who would vote for Joe Biden today if he was on the ballot. But I'm realizing that for a voter like that, who may not ever be convinced of Joe Biden, that he can't do, the 100-meter hurdles at the Paris Olympics, and therefore he shouldn't be president. If you can't drag yourself to vote for Biden, this election might be my exception to the rule, is to say, whatever your thought on Biden, unless you think he is an equal danger to democracy, then, like you said, Greg, look at both of them and say, this is the one I'm not voting for. Yeah. But by the way, if you're not voting for Trump, don't stay home and don't vote third party, because either one of those is a vote for Trump. The only way to vote against Trump right now is to vote for Biden. Maybe somebody else if Biden leaves the race, but right now, you're right, Greg. They shouldn't be undecided.
Yeah, for me, I don't understand in this situation. In other elections, I get that, but this one,
Today's history lesson is coming up next on Up North News Radio for this Friday morning, July 19th. Back in a bit.
To make what life's about, yeah. Every kind of people
In honor of Yacht Rock Friday, let's start today's history lesson in a simpler time in the mid-1970s when Paul McCartney and Wings had the #1 hit on this day.
Anytime, any day, you can hear the people say.
July 19th, 1975, Paul McCartney and Wings had the #1 single in the U.S. A couple of big fires on this day in history. The Great Fire of Rome destroyed half the city over 6 days on this day in AD 64. And on this day in 1845, there was a big, not the biggest, but a big New York City fire that destroyed more than 300 buildings and caused at least 30 deaths, but there would be an even larger one about almost 30 years later. On this day in 1965, the Beatles released a song that would become their 9th #1 hit.
I need somebody help, not just anybody help. You know I need someone help. When I was young.
Now, I'm not a Beatles historian, but I think I know the Beatles well enough that when I said just now that this song "Help" is their 9th #1 hit, I would not have guessed that. I would have thought it came earlier. And this was still 1965. That just tells you how many #1s they cranked out in 1964, 65.
I mean, and what's really funny about, not funny, but amazing about this band, this is 1965. This is Help. They have less than 4 years as a band left.
Yeah.
And they're going to put out so much more material after this. Because, like, we only, like, from 64 to 69, 70 when they break up. But, like, they're just pumping out material. And you think this should be a band with 30 years. Nope.
Interestingly enough, I mean, Paul McCartney would go on, and John Lennon as well, to continue to write for many, many years afterwards. Contrast that with Billy Joel, who got to the end of a particular road. I think it was the Innocent Man album, or maybe it was the one after that. And he said, "That's it. I'm done." And he's like, I can just, do concerts from here on in with what I've already recorded. And it works out great for him. So good for him. Let's see. If you know the Mayo Clinic, Charles Mayo, one of the co-founders, was born this day in 1865. Actor Benedict Cumberbatch is 48 years old today. There's a guy that does both drama and comedy equally well. And also, by the way, in honoring Bob Newhart, very dry.
Very dry.
Very dry and yet funny.
I love Ted Lasso's. It's tribute to him. There's a player on the team. His name is Bumbercatch.
The aforementioned Mr. Joel had a #1 hit this day in 1980.
What's the matter with the clothes I'm wearing? Can't you tell that your tie's too wide?
On this day in 1966, there was a wedding between 50-year-old Frank Sinatra and 20-year-old actress Mia Farrow. The marriage lasted just 2 years, but was all the tabloid fodder of its time. On this day in 1986, Genesis with Phil Collins had their first and only #1 on the Hot 100 Billboard chart with Invisible Touch.
I used to be a real 80s Genesis hater.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I was like, Peter Gabriel or nothing, man. And then I realized I'm wrong and stupid for thinking that.
Didn't Peter Gabriel leave before they actually charted for the first time?
He left in 77.
Yeah.
And then after that, they made like 1 or 2 more records that had like the more artsy feel. And then in the 80s, they moved towards it. But they always made long songs, too. They still jammed. But they just got pop sensibility in the 80s like a lot of bands.
Oh, yeah. It's like, hey, here's how we make money.
Yeah,
On this day in 1995, the movie Clueless debuted in theaters, boosting the film career of Alicia Silverstone. The accompanying soundtrack gave some retro hits a modern makeover, with the pop-punk act The Muffs covering Kim Wilde's single.
Looking out a dirty old window, outside the cars in the city go rushing by. I sit
I am pretty sure I have not seen Clueless. I think at the time, I was raising two young girls, and I was afraid of what I might see, fearful of what the teenage years would be like. And then I realized you can't stop the teenage years. They're just going to happen.
It's a movie.
Yeah.
2, are you a rich lawyer in Beverly Hills? No, you're fine.
I'll be fine.
You should sit down with your daughters and watch it next time they're over.
Okay. All right. There, I'm sending them the note now. Oh, by the way, I did something groundbreaking with my daughters last night. That we've been sending little clips back and forth, funny clips, haha, usually through Snapchat because that's how we typically communicate. But we finally got Sherry on Instagram recently, and she's now become addicted to the funny animal videos and things. So I finally created a group between me and Sherry and both of our daughters. And my first message to them was, yes, your dad has just created a group to share things on Instagram. You may delete your account now. And instead they sent funny clips because I love them.
It's fun. Sending reels is the best.
Yes, it is. On this day in 1999, I think you mentioned this song the other day. Lou Bega released his debut album, A Little Bit of Mambo. After the first 4, he came up with this one.
This is where it really stuck, Pat.
Yep. Yeah. It's where the first 4 fell short. Here's Mambo number 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Everybody in the car, so come on, let's ride to the liquor store around the corner. The boys say they
Well, if you're running to the liquor store around the corner, you need to know that today is National Daiquiri Day.
Yes, it is.
It is Dental Retainer Day. One of those times where I go, who makes up these holidays and can they be stopped? But hey, if you've got a dental retainer, congratulations. This is your special day. Let's see. It is it would be Flight Attendants Day. But of course, there's been far too much disrespect given, and we need to be reminded why they're there. So officially, this is Flight Attendant Safety Professionals Day. All right, because they are there to keep you safe. And it's my hope that if anybody today refers to them as a sky waitress, that they go ahead and open up the door and push them right out. This is Urban Beekeepers Day, which I'm a little plus minus on. I don't mind. I love bees, love pollinators, but urban beekeeper, got to keep them within the fence, keep them within the backyard. I don't know.
Anytime someone says now, like, I'm getting into beekeeping, I'm like, I don't want to talk to you.
And finally, Greg, this is the 19th day of being aware that this is Lasagna Awareness Month.
Are you aware of lasagna?
Has the bit gotten old? Of course the bit's gotten old. Are we giving it up? No, because you commit to a bit, and we're talking about its cheesy goodness for another 12 days. Back with more after this. You're Up North. Good morning, Ms. Merlot.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Doing anything fun this weekend?
I don't know.
You don't know? Oh.
It's this week. I just saw Twisters last night, so I can't even think.
The possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
All right.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Minnesota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
Good morning and welcome back to Up North News Radio, unabashedly Wisconsin, and brought to you by Courier Newsroom, carried by our friends here on the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm Pat Brightlow, and it's 7:06. Nice to have you here up north on this Friday morning, July 19th, coming up this hour. Could the U.S. Supreme Court and other parts of our judicial system see some overdue change and reform that might make cases go a little more smoothly, maybe justice a little more swiftly, maybe without so much partisan politics? We'll see if that's even possible. Talking to former U.S. Attorney Jim Santelle this hour. We'll talk to Mark Jacob about media coverage of this week's big stories, especially the Republican National Convention. And once again, the media wishing out loud for a new and improved and kinder and gentler Donald Trump, who did not magically appear yesterday, even though they wished and hoped out loud as best they could. Dan Schumacher will join us as well to talk about sports. The All-Star break is wrapping up. The Brewers get back in action starting tomorrow in Minnesota against the Twins. Going to be nice to have baseball back. Pre-game tomorrow at 5:35, first pitch 6:10 on WRCE Richland Center, WRJN Racine Kenosha, WCQM Park Falls, WISS Oshkosh. All that at Target Field in Minneapolis, provided people's allergies aren't bothering them. Brittany Merlot is back with us here, and she is going to have a weekend forecast and a big box of tissues because apparently the pollen's back, baby. There
It's
she
back.
is. She's
Oh my
got
gosh.
it. How you doing?
Struggling a little bit this morning, but it's
Aw.
okay. You know,
Okay.
tissue on hand. We'll survive. We'll make it through. A beautiful day ahead. My goodness, just a little bit warmer too. Temperatures climbing into those upper 70s today across the state. Maybe a few 80s will be felt the further west that you live. Otherwise, mostly sunny skies. A few clouds building in this afternoon. We shouldn't see any rain though. That all holds off until tomorrow. The entire state will tap the 80s all weekend long. And we are looking at those scattered shower and storm chances in the northern half of the state tomorrow afternoon. And then it kind of shifts to the southern half and central areas for our Sunday afternoon and evening. But overall, we're still looking at nice dry days. And of course, a lot of people I think are going to be seeing Twisters this weekend. I mean, the movie, not real ones.
No. Please no. But you're going tonight, I would imagine?
You know, I just realized, and I probably thanks to Greg too. I don't remember who told me yesterday, but it aired yesterday. So I went last night.
You did go last night.
I've seen it. It happened.
Ladies and gentlemen, hold on. Welcome to At the Movies with Brittany Merlot. Merlot at the Movies.
I wish I had a theme for that.
I wish, well, you could hum a little something. That's fine. It's time for movie reviews with Brittany. Yeah, okay. Anyway, moving on. What'd you think? Now, again, no spoilers. We don't want to know it's like a tornado watch to a tornado warning. We don't want to know if a tornado actually developed. This is concern about Twisters. So without spoilers, what'd you think?
I actually really, really, really loved it. Of course, I knew I was going to enjoy it because it's a weather theme. I'll love all of those. But when it came down to the science, what they were talking about, the tips and tricks, I was impressed. I was very, very happy. There was only a few Hollywood moments, for the cows. It's not the cows flying. I'm not giving anything away.
Okay.
But you know what I'm talking about. There's a couple of those. And there's almost like an homage to the cow, actually, as well. So
do they, again, without necessarily giving anything away, do they like tip their hat to the original movie? Is there something in there where you go, oh, I see what you did there?
They sure do, which I respect and love. And they also tip their hat to real storm chasers out there.
Oh, good.
The professionals. towns that have been destroyed. So it was actually a really respectful movie. I enjoyed it.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I could see going to it. Again, I have somebody in my household who has a lot of tornado dreams. Maybe it was because she grew up on a farm. I'm not exactly sure. And she might prefer when it's on a smaller screen, but who knows? Maybe that'll be the thing that we see. I'm looking forward to it. If now, having heard your review, I was on the fence, to be sure.
And to be honest with you, it really helps too with people that are scared of storms. I know that sounds weird or counterintuitive, but when you see it, it'll make sense what the storyline is about. But I can't give anything else away. Otherwise, if you do want the full effect, see it in theaters.
Well, that's the last thing I'll say is that with a lot of things where you're looking for the science of it, but then the storytelling gets in the way. For me, the classic example would be like Grey's Anatomy, and people say to Sherry all the time, well, is it like that? And it's like, well, no, there's really not that much sleeping together in hospital closets. But if you're talking about the medical side of it, yes, it's true to form. So did the storytelling, the whatever, I'm sure there was romance or something, did that end up smothering, the reality of the moment, or did they have a good storyline along with good, special effects and things?
It was such a true storyline. I kept leaning over and being like, oh my gosh, this is what it's really like. Listen, this is how it really is.
Were you talking to the cat?
No.
Oh, okay.
I went with one of our other news reporters, actually, out of Wisconsin Rapids. We got together and we went and saw it. It was a big plan. So
okay.
Yeah.
This is a good review.
I did cue something up for both of you. It was just it's a lovely tribute to the first one.
Yes.
Cow. I gotta go, Julia. We got cows.
We got cow.
Another cow.
Actually, I think that was the same one.
Epic.
Look at this. Melissa K pops up on Facebook commenting, that was me. I was there.
Yes.
That's so great. Melissa also added earlier the lasagna awareness count up. I love it so much. Please keep it up.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, we're going to have to do something for the end of Lasagna Awareness Month now at this point.
We have 31 days to really look at the topic and think about it. I mean, some people talk about elections. We're talking about, others, the infrastructure is important. But if we're not talking about the lasagna and the awareness of, what are we talking about?
From Rob in Tigerton. Good morning from Tigerton. It's sunny and 57, a very beautiful morning. Anyone going to EAA, the Highway 45 southbound ramp to I-41 is open and will be until July 29th, which I guess means that must be a construction zone and the ramp's been closed. And Rob, we're putting a lot of faith in you. I did not double check that. I didn't look for a second source. Don't ever send us a text that's pulling our leg, because I'm just putting that right up there, buddy. So I hope you're right. But you are going to EAA, Brittany.
Yes, I will be there all week, and I'll be talking to you guys, so you'll get a little sneak peek.
Wait,
what's
you're
going
reporting
on.
from EAA next week in the mornings?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, do you put up a tent near the runway? I don't know how that exactly works out there.
Well, we're going to see how it's going to work if it's actually raining, but I'm hoping the weather's going to be good in the morning, and I'll be different places throughout the grounds. So anything that's cool and interesting, or whoever is nice around and wants to talk, I'll be over there.
All right. I'll be looking forward to that. Thank you, Brittany. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Have a wonderful weekend. The Up North News daily newsletter comes your way every morning at about 5 a.m. Christina Laurie puts that together for us. You can sign up over at upnorthnewswi.com. She says in today's edition that the largest and longest running water ski tournament in the world is held here in Wisconsin. Tomorrow is the first day of the 2024 Wisconsin State Water Ski Show Championships in Wisconsin Rapids, held on the same lake there for 58 years. 24 water ski show teams and 75 individual skiers will compete for a state title and a chance to move on to the national championship. And she notes that in 2022, the tournament filled every hotel in the Wisconsin Rapids and Plover areas, bringing in nearly $4 million in revenue, and about 120,000 people around the world tuned in for the live webcast. So we've got that story in today's newsletter. Also, a story on some Wisconsin ice cream shops, whether you've been to these ones or not, that are especially noteworthy, like the Sassy Cow Creamery store in Columbus. She's got the full list there. And a note about baseball history: 48 years ago tomorrow, Hank Aaron hit his final home run, number 755, at Milwaukee's County Stadium against the California Angels. So all that and much more in our daily newsletter. You can sign up for it over at UpNorthNewsWI.com. If you missed it during our last hour, we spoke at length about former President Donald Trump's acceptance speech at the Republican National Convention. And as always, if you want to listen back to any previous hour of our show, head over to civicmedia.us. You can find the stations around Wisconsin that carry Up North News Radio. Check out some of the other shows. Also listen back to past episodes. Each hour is its own podcast episode, and you can listen back to some of our clips from the speech and reactions to it. We also spoke in the last hour about the global disruption of communications and other operations for airlines, banks, broadcasters, medical institutions, and more, because a security patch for Microsoft Windows failed miserably, and has led to this global outage in places, not everywhere, but in many places and in many industries. So if you have anything to do with airline flights today, there's a pretty good chance you're going to find them delayed, or maybe some plans will be canceled as a result. So please be aware of that. And I'm sure we'll be giving updates on newscasts throughout the day across the Civic Media Radio Network. But again, the main upshot of the Trump speech at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee last night, closing it, is that the former president started with telling from a personal standpoint about last weekend's assassination attempt, and started to sound themes of unity. For example, he said, "I am running to be president for all of America, not half of America, because there is no victory in winning for half of America." Sounds good, but again, what is your definition of unity? If it involves something along the lines of the compromises and the search for common ground that all the rest of us have to make in our everyday lives, that's great. Bring it on. We all do that. We're all grown-ups. We sometimes have to come together to get something done at our jobs or in our activities, in the groups we belong to. But if instead your idea of unity is continuing to browbeat, badger, and win majorities so large that you can ram through anything that you want to do, that's not unity. That's not governing. That's ruling. And those are themes that the former president came back to later in his speech as he rambled on for more than an hour and a half. More about that, of course, throughout the day on shows across the Civic Media Radio Network. But coming up next, former U.S. Attorney Jim Santelle is going to talk to us more about the dismissal of the documents case against Trump, and about President Biden's talk about reforming the U.S. Supreme Court. Wherever you're listening across Wisconsin on this Friday morning, when you're here, you're up north. We'll be right back. Mr. Santelle, how are you?
Pat, how are you this morning?
I am good, thank you.
Good,
thank you for being here.
Absolutely. I just dropped another note for what it's worth, and I know we have lots to talk about as always, but I do have a case involving lasagna.
Oh my God! Okay.
And it's not what you think either, but
okay.
It's going to disappoint you. But at least the case is called Lasagna versus Lasagna, for what that's worth.
We're so in. All right, this is good. All right, good. We'll get going in a couple minutes here.
Right,
or a few seconds, I should say.
guns and money. Dad, get me out of this. How?
All right, we're joined by former U.S. Attorney Jim Santelle, who also has a weekend show here across the Civic Media Radio Network. Amicus, a law review, can be heard Saturday mornings live from 9 to 11, and then again on Sunday. You can learn more over at civicmedia.us. Mr. Santelle, how are you?
It's always a pleasure with you this morning, and lots and lots of things to talk about. Delighted to be with you this morning, Pat.
Yeah, we had you on special earlier in the week to talk about Judge Eileen Cannon's dismissal of the Mar-a-Lago documents case. We'll come back to that. The short version is it's not going to be dead, but it is going to be significantly delayed as a result of it. We've had a Democratic senator from New Jersey, Bob Menendez, convicted on federal bribery counts, and I cannot believe more isn't being said about that. We'll talk about Joe Biden's package of possible Supreme Court reforms, but before we get to any of that, Jim's been listening in. He knows it's Lasagna Awareness Month, and believe it or not, Jim has a case involving lasagna.
It focused on bringing you the latest litigation news, although this is not the latest, actually. Searching, however, for things that are relevant not only to this discussion, but all your listeners. Believe it or not, there's a case called Lasagna versus Lasagna. Yes, that's right. It's in Berkeley. It's from last April. Went up to the Court of Appeals out there in California. I'm going to disappoint you only by indicating that it's actually not about lasagna, but it is about a family of people who are disputing a property and ownership of it, eviction, and all those kinds of things, tenancy. Their last names, Lasagna. And so all the petitioners, all the parties in this, all their names are Lasagna. I was hoping it was going to be something more related to noodles and an Italian a delight, but in fact, it's about property interests. Even so, appellate issues involving lasagna here on your wonderful broadcast.
I like that you understand a theme and are able to go along with it. And if we ever get an update on that particular case, we will cue up Billy Joel's Scenes from an Italian Restaurant and we'll get into it. But we'll get to some of the other traditional news first as well, I guess. Let's start with the possibility of Supreme Court reforms. And for as long as Trump was first president, there has been talk about reforming the Supreme Court. He eventually got to appoint 3 justices. The 6 conservative justices that are now there have proven themselves to be overtly political in their interpretation of the law. And others have noted that the Supreme Court had been expanded before, say, to match the number of federal judicial districts, or at least do something. And President Biden initially said he was. There was a little looking into it. There wasn't really anything formal that was introduced. So where does all this sit now with only 6 months left in his term?
Absolutely. So early on in Biden's term, as you note well, commissioned a study, sometimes a dangerous thing to do, right? Especially with lawyers and scholars together in a room contemplating the future, but did this study and they came back and said, well, there's some options. If you want to do things, it was sort of milquetoast, went on the shelf and has been there presumably ever since that time. So just this past week or so, especially in the wake of this horrific, catastrophic immunity decision, which is also part of this, the president was asked about whether there was any interest, any movement on Supreme Court reform. And he dropped this hint that he is in fact working on a package of things, and those include aspects of this proposal, most of it legislative, that would do things like establish an ethics code, which again, on this broadcast, we've often talked about that. Believe that a legislative action, some sort of passage of a bill or so, could indeed establish something if the Supreme Court doesn't do that. He's also talked about term limits as well. Now, that's something that sounds like it's only remedied through constitutional changes because there's this reference in the Constitution to lifetime tenure through the good behavior clause. But there's also been some legislation introduced that sort of indicates, well, we'll keep you as a Supreme Court justice, but we'll just move you into kind of a different status. And we'd have 10 or 15-year terms. That's apparently a part of this package. And then he's also added on this notion of making a constitutional amendment that would prohibit and eliminate this notion of executive or presidential immunity. That's also a very big lift, undeniably changing the Constitution. but it underscores, again, the significance of that.
Yeah, and because it's all legislative, I mean, you basically would need 60 votes in the Senate to overcome a filibuster. So all of that would be a heavy lift in and of itself. Of course, it is too little too late, given that there's only 6 months left in a divided Congress. But for my point, and again, I don't want to come off whining about this, but I want to say from a realistic standpoint, the time to do this wasn't after that terrible immunity decision. The time to do it was right after the Dobbs decision, when you had justices who pledged to Congress during their confirmation hearings that Roe v. Wade was settled law. And as soon as they showed that they were not, and as soon as the first reports came out of Clarence Thomas and others accepting basically bribes, that's when this stuff should have come down. And it's just been too little too late. And that takes me to my next topic about too little too late. And again, let's make the point here when we talk about Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey, that much like with Hunter Biden and Al Franken before him, on the Democratic side of things, there is no quarter given. If you're breaking the law, you're breaking the law. Unlike the way Republicans have circled the wagon around Donald Trump. And yet you're still seeing that on the Republican side. Bob Menendez is defiant to the end, but he was convicted this week on bribery.
Absolutely. Bribery and conspiracy, extortion, obstruction of justice. The first sitting senator to be convicted in our nation's history of serving as a foreign agent. That's no small thing. And you don't have to be a lawyer or a judge or even a member of a jury to determine that. Foreign agency. And so this is one of those situations where, again, rule of law. I would like to think there is one party that upholds it and says, you know what, we embrace the notion, as you just described, Pat, that juries make decisions, charges are brought by grand juries and by prosecutors, judges preside, and in the end, we embrace the system. In this case, once again, Bob Menendez found guilty in a compelling presentation. Lots and lots of criminal behavior here. His wife also still out there facing a charges as well. He needs, of course, to resign from the Senate now. Probably will do that. The New Jersey governor then can presumably appoint somebody in the interim. But this is no small thing. And again, as you indicated, many people are on the receiving end, if you will, of charges. And what we do is we let the system play out. We don't cry. We don't gnash our teeth about some unfair witch hunt. We let the system go.
Yes, exactly. Now, I just find it astounding that national media isn't covering this. This is a very big deal and deserves more. We've got 60 seconds left, so not nearly enough time to go over the Eileen Cannon dismissal. So why don't you start with that while teasing what folks will hear on your show tomorrow morning?
Sure, absolutely. So we now know that Jack Smith, the Department of Justice, has indeed appealed that ruling, that unsupported ruling to the 11th Circuit. Interestingly, he has not apparently sought her recusal, depending upon what they do. That will be months. There's no way this case is going to trial anytime soon, but it is still alive. It has been dismissed at the district court level, but will still be the subject of appellate review. We're going to talk about that. We're going to tell you more about the Menendez trial. We're going to talk more generally about lots of rule of law things that have happened while all the rest of us have been focusing upon Supreme Court cases, lots of other things going on in America, and the aspiration for justice in our nation.
Amicus, a law review, can be heard Saturday mornings starting at 9, live on the Civic Media Radio Network. Jim Santelle, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. All right, we'll come back with Mark Jacob right after this. You're Up North.
She was with the Russians too.
There we go.
Very good.
Hey, thank you very much.
I'll research more Italian items here. Maybe there's probably a pizza. Well, there's certainly lots of pizza cases out there, I'm sure. But I'll see if we've got more time. I'll see if there's something more direct in the lasagna, or maybe a recipe theft of some kind. Right?
You can either go for a lasagna theme or. After the show next Friday, I will be racing down to Milwaukee for Yacht Rock night at the Brewers game. So, yachts could also be our theme, but I'll leave that to you and I'll talk to you then.
Thanks, Pat. We'll work on all that. Have a good weekend.
All right. See you later.
Greg.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
How are we doing, Mark?
Doing fine.
Really?
I'm
not. I don't know how you are.
I made a really important kind of personal decision to not watch hardly any of the Republican speeches in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
And I even also turned off Katie Tur on MSNBC because she was being so ridiculous.
Oh my God, just ridiculous this week.
So I just put on some music, on music I like, and did my usual reading and writing, and I was a lot more mentally healthy ignoring those people.
Good. A little self-care is never a bad thing.
Yeah, it was driving me nuts. I mean, it was like it was depressing, but actually the interesting thing is last night I think maybe buoyed some people on the Democratic side because Trump was such a terrible.
Oh yeah, that's what I'd read is it was the first good news Democrats had gotten in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So that part I get. The rest, just
from the media standpoint, it's shameful.
Oh
and,
my God.
And we can get into it if you want because that's kind of it's one of the stories of the week is how much the news media disserved the country this week.
Oh gosh, and that's seriously putting it mildly. All right, no, I think that's everything here. So 2.5 minutes, I'll bring you back in.
Great.
I would never let Greg Bach down. If we're going to have Yacht Rock Fridays, of course, we're going to hear a little Michael McDonald, with or without the Doobie Brothers. Welcome back to Up North News Radio at 7:34 on this Friday morning, the day after the Republican National Convention wraps up at the Fiserv Forum and the surrounding areas of downtown Milwaukee. Former President Trump giving the acceptance speech, heading into the campaign now against President Joe Biden. Or will it be President Joe Biden? Will there be somebody else on the Democratic ticket come November. Will there be somebody else on the Republican ticket? Because Donald Trump's not the healthiest man, but more importantly, it appears a lot of delegates would vote for Hulk Hogan after the performance that he gave at the Republican convention. For that and much more, we turn now to our friend Mark Jacob, who did well to tend to his mental health, given the media coverage of Trump and the Republicans of late. I watched Tommy Boy last night rather than a lot of the convention. Mark, how did you pass the time?
I made it a rule that if I'm watching MSNBC and I see Katie Tour come on and talk about how Trump has been humbled by this experience, that I immediately will turn off the television and put on The Clash or the Jayhawks or somebody else, some other band I like, and I feel a lot better about it. And I still follow the news, but you sometimes you just got to get away from this toxic environment, and I felt like what happened at the Republican convention was toxic, and it was not. I mean, they had a good time. Clearly, I mean, it was great for them. It was terrible for the news media, Pat. It was
terrible. Here's the quintessential example, and normally it's the New York Times, but Mark, you could sense heads wanting to explode when the story came out in Politico. The headline is, "A changed Trump? Some allies detect an existential shift after the shooting." And the lead by Natalie Allison goes like this: "In the days since he survived a would-be assassin's bullet, Republicans who have observed and spoken with former President Donald Trump say they have detected a new softness to the man whose brand has been anything but." I will try not to yell as I say this next part, Mark, but are you kidding me? How are we still subjected to stories about Trump is going to pivot? He's going to be kind and gentler and soft. And I think yours was the first post I saw that said, some editor had the job of letting that story go or spiking it. Right. And some editor said, run that puppy.
Right.
How?
That's the thing. I mean, I was in the news business for, 4 decades, and I was an editor, and part of an editor's job is, reporters aren't perfect, and sometimes they go off the rails, and they're trying hard, maybe. And it's the editor's job to say, I don't think so. This is not going to be good for us or you. Rewrite this lead, or the whole angle's wrong. We're not going to run it. I mean, that happened in a normal course of events, but at Politico, apparently that kind of thing doesn't happen. A new softness. I mean, that's not just a new softness. That's a new soft-headedness by Politico, and it's just so embarrassing to see the news media talk about him being humbled or new softness, or this idea that I mean, we're not going to see a pivot. We might see very temporary kind of attempts to throw out some sort of like nicety that people can cling to pretend he's not this scary, really mean guy who wants to do terrible things to people.
There was never an infrastructure week. There was never a replacement for Obamacare, and there is never a pivot.
No.
If you just keep those 3 things in mind, if nothing else, that should tell you what a second Trump term would be like. We're talking to Mark Jacob. You can get his newsletter at stopthepresses.news, along with his Media Misses series that he does with Stephen Beschloss on a regular basis. How do you even pick topics for the newsletter and the video series this week, Mark?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I look forward. I mean, I am trying to prepare for a possible change at the top of the Democratic ticket. We'll have to see what happens here. The thing that's kept me kind of sane about that is that, really, no matter who the Democrats put at the top of their ticket, it's going to be better than what we saw this week. And, so let's just see the whole process play its way out. But anyway, so, I like to look forward. So I've been thinking a lot about Kamala Harris, and the thing about her, Pat, and just a little sneak preview on what I might write and I've written some of this before, is that they never criticize her based on her policy or her performance. It's always this kind of petty, sexist, racist kind of crap. It's she's cackles, she laughs funny, she over smirks. That was one of the criticisms of her. She over smirks. In other words, she's actually a happy warrior, like Humphrey. She's actually a politician who tries to have some fun and not like demonize people and be mean. And and that's a bad thing. And so when you say that somebody, you don't like their laugh, and that's the worst thing you can say about somebody, you might really want to question what the person's motives are in making the criticism. So you're going to see if there were a change at the ticket, who knows if there will be. You're going to see a lot of that. You're going to see a lot of innuendo about how she slept her way to the top and all this other. You're going to see the most sexist, disgusting stuff you've ever seen. And, we ought to be prepared for it.
And I mean, even at the convention, which, again, there was this talk of it being kinder and gentler, but you could still get buttons and other paraphernalia with the phrase they've been having for 4+ years, Joe and the hoe must go. And they think they're so funny. They think it's funny stuff.
Right. And Pat, they like, and I've been collecting these. They say, well, she's unqualified. And Tom Cotton, of course, called her unqualified. Well, let's just look at it. She was district attorney of San Francisco. Then she was attorney general of the most populous state in the United States. Then she was a United States senator who got 7.5 million votes in an election. And now she's vice president. And how is that unqualified? She's been in public life twice as long as Tom Cotton. So how is she unqualified? I'm trying to figure that out. And it's code for she's a woman and she's black.
Yes, exactly. And so there is this broader focus around Kamala Harris, and we're not going to get too deep into the political weeds on it this time around, but the coverage of it is what is so striking, because what you could have again seen late last night, and I mean late last night because Trump spoke till after midnight East Coast time, you could have just as easily seen articles about his cognitive decline and the rambling and the ongoing lying, not to mention being a convicted felon, a rapist, a fraudster, somebody who stole national security secrets, and he should not be in the race. And yet there's only been one person having a successful presidency who's been dogged like this. And I have to say, when we talk about PAC journalism, I have never seen a PAC attack quite like this before. And I'll get to the Democrats who are aiding and abetting this in a moment. But just from the standpoint of, we're doing the unfit for office theme on this guy, but we're saying nothing about unfit for office on this guy, is extremely telling, Mark.
Right. And well, I think it's media. Part of it is media going to the conflict. And there is not a conflict in the Republican Party. They kept on talking about unity and all that stuff. Well, it's easy to get unity when you kick people out of the party that you have previously targeted for being hanged in front of the Capitol, or in the case of Liz Cheney, that you called for a military tribunal on made up charges. I mean, when you banish those people from your party, you're going to be unified. And so there's not this kind of, in media, they like storytelling, they like conflict, they like narrative. And in the Republican Party, there isn't a conflict, because everyone who's left in the party seems to agree that it's okay for criminals to run the party.
Let's get into something media related that was really eye-popping. First thing Monday morning, folks tune into MSNBC figuring they're going to see, one of their signature shows talking about the opening of the convention and the assassination attempt over the weekend. And Morning Joe had been pulled just for a day, but pulled for, quote unquote, breaking news coverage when there was no breaking news in the 36 hours, that had happened since the shooting. Joe Scarborough came on the next day and basically said, do that again and I'm out of here. Right. But let's just talk about the decision to preempt your morning show for something like this. I imagine that happening with Today or Good Morning America or anything. It just wouldn't happen.
Yeah, well, hope it wouldn't happen, but it is. These big media companies are being run like businesses and they're not being run in many cases like journalism outfits. And NBC especially. Let's remember that these are the same executives who wanted to hire Ronna McDaniel as a commentator. Who Ronna McDaniel, head of the Republican National Committee, who was a co-plotter in the fake elector scheme, and they wanted to hire her in the on-air talent through a fit, and they backed off on it. So here they come So they don't have no journalism integrity, clearly. And so they decide that it might be scary to have Joe Scarborough on. I mean, Pat, in journalism, if you're a leader, if you're a manager, as I was at one time, the worst thing you can do is show a lack of confidence in your own staff and say that you don't trust your own staff.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't trust your own staff, you shouldn't have that staff ever. And the idea that when a really important story happens, you can't put your main host on the air, it says a lot about you and your lack of trust for your own people.
Yeah, I mean, it either speaks to that they think there is a problem with Joe Scarborough and all the folks on there, or that they're the ones with the problem. And I think most of us are choosing the latter. The economy and the way that it's covered has also been, I think, nothing short of a failure. I mean, you noted, as did I, that folks on Fox News and others, as Wall Street marched into record territory again this week, 41,000 or whatever the Dow is at now, they're giving the credit to Donald Trump, thinking, well, he might be about to win the election, when the stock market has been going up the entire 4 years under Joe Biden. It's magical thinking on the part of people who want the title of journalist and are throwing that credibility away.
Well, and let's really remember here that even if you believe the polls, and I don't necessarily believe the polls, but if you do believe the polls, which a lot of people in the news media seem to, worship them as a religion, it's close. It's a close race right now.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at even in the, you look at the battleground states and the polls, and it's, there are a few points. It could go either way. I mean, to me, it's frightening that we're in a situation in which it could go either way with a candidate as bad as Donald Trump. I mean, that is a statement, and not a good statement, about the state of the American electorate. But this idea that you would have the stock market behave the way it did in anticipation of some of the party in power not winning when the polls are this close is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. I mean, the credit normally would go to the party in power, which is the Democrats. And, there's just a lot of things. I guess, Pat, one of the things I wanted to mention on this, my segment here is the news media let the Republicans lie so much this week about, crime is out of control. Crime is not out of control. In fact, it's way down. It's significantly down from what it was in the Trump administration. So just letting them lie and not correcting it. I mean, the media needs to bear some responsibility for letting Republicans lie for 4 days and not correcting them in real time.
Yeah, not just that, but also that for Trump to say the border was safer. The border was quiet because we were in the midst of COVID. Nobody wanted to move anywhere at that point. So the economy, crime, the border, all up and down the range of issues. You can find opportunities to correct the record, and they did not. And then finally, briefly, Mark, because I didn't watch extensive coverage, but did anybody do a credible job of bringing on what we would know of as mainstream Republicans? Were there sightings of Liz Cheney's or Mitt Romney's or Paul Ryan's or any kind of counter programming that way?
I didn't see any of that, and that would have been really valuable coverage. I mean, if they've tracked down Paul Ryan, anyone who was considered kind of a normal Republican back in the before Trump turned the party into a cult, that would have been. But that would have maybe. There are two explanations for that, Pat. One is that the media just is going to take whatever is put in front of them, or the other thing would be that they, that the Republicans were laying low.
Yeah, exactly. Mark Jacob, thank you so much. Appreciate that you watched as much as you did. Have a good weekend. We'll talk to you later.
See you later.
Dan Schumacher is coming up next. You're Up North. There we go. All right. Thank you, sir. See you later. Oh, let's see. And where's Dan today?
I'm in Kim's basement.
Oh, my. Which is not quite the doghouse, but close. Okay.
No, the dog.
Did you like her new cornhole game?
Yeah, I just saw it late last night when I got home.
Yeah. Wasn't it nice?
Yeah, her and her daughters were at Rockfest, so they're upstairs sleeping, and I don't want to wake them all up.
All right.
So
all right.
They got home at 2:00 in the morning from Rockfest. So.
Surprised they didn't stay out there.
No, they only wanted to see this one band last night that didn't even go on till 11 o'clock, and then
oof.
And then
who was it?
I don't know, man. I never heard of some of these bands, man. It's but they're going back out Saturday, so
okay.
They're not doing the country fest where they do it for 4 nights in a row with a camper out there.
What do we call it? Let's call it Rock Fest. Oh, over. All right, I guess. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
I've been balling a shiny black steel jackhammer, been chipping up rocks for the great.
Welcome back to Up North News Radio. Time for a little Grateful Dead on Friday mornings before we wrap things up. So, Dan, who are we spinning today?
Well, that's Pigpen singing right now.
Oh yeah,
Pigpen. He was the original organ piano players. One of the original members of the Dead who died in 72.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
52 years ago. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Dan Schumacher, Executive Director of Athletics for Northland College, joins us sometimes from Ashland, sometimes from back down here in Chippewa, where he's in the basement of a place right now where the folks sleeping upstairs got home really late from Rockfest in Cadott, and I had to look up which band it was. It was 30 Seconds to Mars.
That's it. That's the one.
Oh God!
Which didn't take the stage until after 11 last night. So
that's the actor Jared Leto's band.
Yes. Yep.
Oh, really?
Yep. And now I recall some social posts of, Jared Leto is in Wisconsin or something. So yeah,
I saw pictures of him he was posing with people. I'm like, why is he in Wisconsin?
And now we know he's in Cadott. Tomorrow night, Shinedown is the main act, and
I
then,
almost said that, man.
and then let's see, who am I missing? Oh, Jelly Roll as well. So
I was surprised on that one. I was surprised.
Wow.
That's who they're going to go see Saturday night, I think.
Okay. There you go.
He's crossover. He's country and Rockfest, I guess.
He's got a lot of appeal. There's the song right now about I'm not okay. I'm not okay, but I'll be all right, or something like that.
Right, yep.
It's a nice common man message that I think we all need to hear from time to time. Certainly.
Well, NFL camps reporting this week.
Uh-oh.
It's starting.
Here we go.
It's happening.
I was all excited about baseball being back from the All-Star break. He's jumping right into summer camp NFL. Let's go, baby. Which reminds me that where he is right now, your friend Kim gave us or lent us her cornhole game. We needed a couple of cornhole games for the big birthday bash. God, how long ago? 2 weeks ago now. And I had to replace it because unfortunately the 5-year-old grandson decided to walk up one of the little ramps and crushed it. Because it's cornhole, they're on those little tiny stilts.
Yeah, right.
I'm watching the 5-year-old go up and it comes right back down. I'm like, no, buddy, that's not meant for you to walk up on.
She got replacements that are
I got replacements. I could not find the exact American flag cornhole platform replacements. And so I figured you'd appreciate the fact that I got her some shiny new Green Bay Packers ones.
Yeah, that's all we need is a little bit more Green Bay crap.
Said the show's resident Bears fan. Speaking, and we'll go ahead and start with your Bears because your quarterback draft pick, your 83rd quarterback this century so far, signed a deal this week.
Finally. I don't recall. I never really researched why there was a delay in the signing. They announced
because it's the Chicago Bears. Yeah. He was hoping for anything, any lifeline whatsoever.
Yeah, they would screw up a one-car funeral. The Bears. It's. But I'm just excited to have football back. To be honest with you, and with my Cubbies not doing too well, baseball's kind of low on the interest. But
I see the holdup was Caleb Williams did not want a franchise tag to be put on him as part of his contract, but the Bears held firm and refused, and he ultimately caved and signed the contract.
Sure.
For folks that aren't familiar with it, a franchise tag is something where if they put that tag on you when your contract is up, it's okay. We're not going to negotiate with you. You get this much of a raise, and so you still get a very respectable raise. But you could have gotten even more if they'd have let you walk away. So it's a weird little situation that they have there. And
I saw Randall Cobb retired yesterday.
Yes, yeah. I mean, now he hasn't played for a couple of years here, and he says it's not a full retirement. He's just going to go broadcast games for the SEC network, I think. But again, changing of the guard, we can be in denial.
He was a good player. He was one of the few Packers that, he was a good teammate, looked like, and him and Aaron had a good relationship when they're all at the Packers. Everything comes to an end at some point. So
to everything there is a season. That's right.
Yeah.
So
but how are your Brewers doing?
Well, our Brewers start off 4.5 games in first place ahead of the Cardinals. They will take on the Twins in Minnesota. They'll do that tonight, or not tonight. They'll do that tomorrow night. Where's my time here? There it is.
Only a 2-game series? Only a 2-game series.
It's only a 2-game series, yeah. Pregame at 5:35 tomorrow. First pitch at 6:10, and then they'll do it at 1:10, right? Yep, 1:10 on Sunday at Target Field, and then it's off to Wrigley Field to play the Cubs night games Monday and Tuesday, and then a day game on Wednesday for your last place Chicago Cubs as they start the season. But again, like I say about elections, there's an eternity. Anything is possible between now and the fall.
Yeah. Well,
I'm trying to help here, buddy. I'm saying anything is possible.
Anything's possible. I tell you what, to regress a little bit back to the beginning with the Dead, they were announced yesterday that they're getting the Kennedy Award.
Cool.
What?
They're getting the Kennedy. They were one of, I forget the list of people. You could probably Google it and see the list who were named. They will get the Kennedy Awards, this medallion or whatever they get. I don't even know. I wonder if they're going to perform.
Here we go.
That'd make Phil Lesh back in the mix.
From the Washington Post, 3 artists, a band, and a building walk into the Kennedy Center. In an unusual twist, the storied Harlem Theater, the Apollo, New York's gravitational center for black arts that turns 90 years old today, is among the 47th class of Kennedy Center honorees. The honors also include renowned filmmaker Francis Ford Coppola, blues rock star Bonnie Raitt, well-deserved, celebrated Cuban-American trumpeter and composer Arturo Sandoval, and the Grateful Dead, whose living honorees are Mickey Hart, Bill Kreutzmann, Phil Lesh, and Bob Weir.
Yep. I thought that was cool. Maybe it was long overdue. I don't know.
Yeah, the December 8th.
Bonnie Raitt too is long overdue.
Yeah.
Yes. The December 8th ceremony will take place at the Opera House there, and the center has not decided whether there will be a host, because last year there was a host, but the year before there wasn't a host or something like that. Award shows are just so different than they used to be.
With that show, usually they don't perform like
Right.
when Led Zeppelin got the award.
Yeah.
Hart performed, and it's like a tribute. So.
Yes, and so we'll see who does the tribute.
I'll bet you Fish. I bet
That'd
you
be
they're bringing
amazing.
Fish to play.
That would be
interesting. The Deadheads would go crazy on that.
I bet you would like that very much. All right, Dan Schumacher, thank you for breaking some news and the update as always. Have a great weekend.
Right on. You have a good weekend now.
All right, Greg, we'll see you Matt and Air on Air 2 hours from now. Be there. Thanks to today's guests, Mark Jacob, Dan Schumacher there, Jim Santelle. Next week, we'll have Congressman Mark Pocan and Trygve Olsen from the Lincoln Project joining us. Thank you as well for being here. Up North News is the Wisconsin outlet for Courier, a pro-democracy news network building a more informed, engaged, and representative America. Have a wonderful weekend. I'm Pat Kreitlow. We'll see you Monday morning up north.